Welcome to the Ask Dr. Mom Show, episode 15. In this episode, we discuss transitioning from breast milk, we discuss Strep B during pregnancy, and I will warn you, this episode is a little longer than normal because we also get into a lengthy discussion on staying grounded and not coming from a place of fear. You don't need to be afraid. You can handle this. And here's how you do it.
The Ask Dr. Mom Show.
Welcome to the Ask Dr. Mom Show, episode 15. In last week's episode 14, we had a very honest and what I considered a really good question from Yolandi. Was it Yolandi?
Yes.
Yes. She was asking about a squirrel bite because her sister had tried to catch a squirrel, was bitten, and so she was asking what to do and trying to decide whether to move forward with a tetanus shot.
Yeah.
So in last week's episode, we got into a pretty lengthy discussion on this, and then this week, Yolandi actually responded to our answer. I'd like to share this, and then I want to take a few minutes to give an example and really kind of dwell on something that you shared with her that was perfect. Okay, Yolandi says, Sandra and Alicia, thank you so much for answering my question about the squirrel bite. As Alicia mentioned, sometimes you find yourself in a place of fear and how important it is to calm down and center yourself before making decisions. This is exactly what happened. I was caught off guard and freaked out internally a bit, and Yolandi, I want you to know that is perfectly normal.
It happens to all of us.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I cannot tell you how many times I have been in a life and death situation where I appeared perfectly calm and cool on the exterior, but there were moments inside where I was completely panicked. So this is very normal. I think this is what helps keep us grounded, actually. I took a moment to center myself and thought about the things I've learned, what I already know, and what I have on hand. And I went forward following my intuition. And I could literally take weeks upon weeks of episodes just to tell you and demonstrate through example how important that is, to follow your intuition. Listen to that inner voice. Okay, when my sister asked about whether or not to get the tetanus shot, we discussed it and I told her she needs to go with her gut on this one. That was perfect advice. I couldn't answer it for her. She felt that it wasn't necessary and decided not to go. I continued to clean it out and reapply the paste, monitoring the wound and her well-being over a couple of days. The squirrel bite happened about a week and a half ago, and all is well. Thank you so much. Yolandi, thank you for sharing that with us. I looked at this yesterday and thought about what you had advised her, which was absolutely perfect. And I realized that in today's society, in this conventional box that most of us are raised in, and pretty much brought up to believe that it's absolute truth, when we are caught in this conventional box, so much of our life is fear-based, especially when it comes to medicine and wellness and health. So I want to share an example today. I want to take a few minutes out of this episode and share an example with everyone that follows right along with exactly what Yolandi did to handle the situation she was involved in. My mother was born in 1918 in the Deep South. She was born in the Ozarks of Arkansas. She grew up as the oldest of 9 children, but she did have a brother who was born before her that they lost to croup before she was born. So when my mother was born, she ended up getting croup also. In the middle of the night, my grandparents realized that she was not going to live through the night because they'd been through this before. They knew the symptoms, the scenario. And so my grandfather, who was a sharecropper, hooked the horse up to the buckboard, put my mother and grandmother in it, and started racing into town to try and get to the doctor before they lost my mother. On the way into town, it became obvious that my mother wouldn't live long enough to get to town. So my grandfather pulled in to this shack and pounded on the door to see if he could get help. An African-American lady answered this door. Now, to me, this is a very important part of the story because, again, you have to realize this is 1918.
Yeah.
Feelings in the South ran high.
Yeah.
My grandfather was very white and a sharecropper. This woman did not have to help my grandfather. In fact, if she had come from a fear-based place or if she had acted on prejudice, she would have turned my grandfather away, but she didn't. She took them into her home. She used what she had on hand, using logic and common sense. My mother could not breathe. This wonderful woman took a slab of meat, punched it full of holes, and then poured turpentine and kerosene into it. She wrapped it around my mother's throat, and the aromatherapy from that turpentine and kerosene immediately opened up all of my mother's respiratory passages, and she was able to breathe. This incredible woman saved my mother's life that night because she was centered, she was calm, she used what she had on hand, she acted on what she knew, and she allowed her love and her kindness to overcome whatever fear or prejudice she may have had. And because of all these different things, my mother's life was saved. Now, my mother, as I've already said, was born in the Deep South. She lived through the Depression. She lived through World War II. When she and my father met in Chicago, in the big city, they decided to move to California, to the land of opportunity, to start their lives together, which is where I was born. My mother was very much a do-it-yourselfer. She ground her own wheat, made her own bread, she sewed, she quilted, she gardened. I just did not grow up with the word can't in my vocabulary. If something needed to be done,
you did it.
You just got it done, whatever it took. And so when people have read my books or they've come to my seminars and they've heard or read about some of my experiences, quite often people will say, I don't know if I could be that brave.
Yeah.
And whenever they say that, it really catches me off guard. I'm never quite sure how to respond to it because I've never considered anything I have done as coming from a place of bravery. It goes back to more of what you advised with Yolandi. It just comes from a place of knowing that it can be done. That we learn as much as we can. We take what we've learned and apply it to our everyday experiences. We see how it works, which then builds our confidence to tackle the next thing, which might be a little more challenging than the last thing we did. And each time, as we progress and the things we have learned and tried work, then our confidence grows and we become more grounded. And so I really wanted to drive this home today, that far too often, especially in our society, we come from a place that is fear-based. We think that we have to stay in this box. We have to depend on other people and other technologies to take care of us, when the truth is, if we'll just step back a little bit, use our common sense, remain logic-based, I would say that probably 98% of anything that ever happens to us, we can actually handle much better on our own. With just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of experience, and then growing from that place. It's time that more and more and more of us start taking responsibility for our own health, because that's where it belongs.
Well, and I think there's a pattern of behavior, not just in your health, but just in life. And while the resources that we have and the experts that we have available to us that didn't exist in 1918.
That's right.
While those resources and those individuals are wonderful and they're to be used as resources, that doesn't make them the expert. I have a friend that talks about giving away your power. And,
that's right.
And I think that's when we always look outward for the answer instead of collecting the information and then making a decision, for ourselves that we're the ultimate expert in our life. I think that's giving away your power.
That's right.
That's putting someone else in the authority position in your life that you should be.
It goes back to being the captain of your own ship.
Yeah.
And I want to make this statement too while we're on this topic. I am extremely grateful for our triage care, the emergency care we have right now, and the technology. Oh my gosh, if one of my children was hit by a drunk driver out on the freeway today, I would be so grateful for the technology and the experts that we have at our disposal. But on a day-to-day basis, I think for the most part we are far overusing and abusing the system rather than just taking responsibility back for ourselves. So again, Yolandi, thank you so much for sending in your experience and sharing the outcome of how this happened. And again, I want to let you know that I think what you did was absolutely perfect, and you will move from this experience on to many more, I am sure, with a little more confidence than you had before. This is something, quite often when I go out and do lectures or meet with people, I always warn them, be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it. Years ago, when I first started studying alternative health and herbs and essential oils and all these different things, I just couldn't learn fast enough. I mean, I just was reading and researching and wanting to know more.
It's a whole new world.
Oh, this whole world opened up to me, and I was so excited. And, in the beginning, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, hey, look what we can do. And, most people don't want to hear what you're saying. So anyway, because I wanted to learn so bad, what happened for me was exactly what just happened with Yolandi. I was given experiences.
To learn from.
To learn. Yeah. Because, when we pray for patience, we're not handed patience.
You're given opportunities.
We're given opportunities to learn patience.
Right.
So
to stretch that patience.
That's right.
To stretch your knowledge.
So when I wanted this knowledge, it was given to me with experiences. Yeah. Fortunately, in my case, I started out with easy things, maybe an ear infection or something that I could handle because I had already dealt with it with so many other children. Right. And once I saw that that worked, then the next time it was something a little harder and a little harder and a little more challenging until, eventually some of them ended up life and death type things. But it was a line upon line process.
That built upon each other.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful for it. But if you don't want to go there, be careful.
Don't ask for it.
That's right, be careful.
Well, and I love in your books that you share those experiences and those stories, and you talk about that outwardly you were very calm, but inwardly you were
definitely
a lot of prayer.
That's right, a lot of prayer, some panic,
Yeah.
some fear.
Yeah.
But again, if you can just ground yourself and get centered, listen to that intuition, to that inner voice, in my case, one of two things always happened. Either I was given the inspiration to do certain things, or somebody would step into my life who had all of those answers and or experience and teach me so that I could learn.
And asking a question it's a powerful process to go through, whether it's vocally or internally.
Absolutely.
But you ask the question, and that sets the events in motion to get the answer. But if the opportunity never comes up, you don't think to ask the question.
That's right.
You don't just sit around and say, hey, how can I solve this problem? Because the problem hasn't presented itself.
And if you send the energy out there, the universe will answer it.
We'll bring it right back.
All right, what are our questions for today?
Agnes asks, can I start giving my 1-year-old baby soy milk when I wean her off of breast milk, or is there a better option?
Agnes, I would be really careful about using soy products, especially with a 1-year-old. Most, and I think it's like 95%, may even be 98%, most all of the soy that we are using in America is genetically modified. And that can have a lot of side effects, if we want to use that term, on the human body, especially a young infant who is still developing. Because of some of the components of soy, it tends to cause a rise in estrogen levels. And so I would be really concerned about using a soy milk. I would much prefer using something like an almond milk, or even moving into green drinks. Or if you want to use a milk product, then I would stick with something like raw goat's milk, which is the closest thing that we have to human milk. Because up until the age of 18 months to 2 years, that goat's milk, the dairy, is actually very beneficial to a young child whose brain is developing and all of the cells are reproducing so rapidly. It can be very beneficial. So if it were me, in my opinion, I would steer clear of the soy milks.
Yeah, and I had various siblings that had food allergies and different issues, and that's what my mom used, was raw goat's milk, even as children, like from the time they were toddlers to any milk product they had. It was raw goat's milk.
That's the closest thing to human milk that we have.
That's awesome.
Okay, what do we have for question number 2?
Susie asks, hi, I have a question for Dr. Mom. Based on your midwifery experience, what can you share about group B strep? I was just routinely tested for it. I haven't received the results yet, but have been doing a ton of research on it. I am planning to have a home birth and won't have the option for, nor am I a fan of, antibiotics. What has been your experience with this? What are your recommendations in the event that someone has it and they are planning a home birth?
Susie, that's a wonderful question. And when I had my midwife practice, I did come in contact with this dilemma several times. What we did was, if the mothers wanted to be tested for Strep B, then I would send them in to be tested. If the test came back positive, then in the last 10 days to 2 weeks before their delivery, I would have them do a golden seal douche. So I would have them make up a tea out of golden seal, and then they would douche with that tea. Typically we would probably do that every evening for 5 to 7 days. just to flush out any infection that might possibly be there. Another thing that I have seen women do is use tea tree oil, which could be applied to, you could use a tampon, although I hesitate to recommend that right before birth. But you could put tea tree oil onto a tampon or a cotton ball and place that up into the birth canal at night while you're sleeping for 2 or 3 days. Another thing that I have known women to do successfully is to use a clove of garlic. And again, insert that vaginally.
A whole clove?
A whole clove.
Okay, so don't
not the whole.
Crush it.
No, because that raw garlic juice can cause blistering.
Okay.
So yes, that's a very good question.
But peel it first.
So yes, you're going to peel it off, and but do not crush it in any way to get those juices flowing. And if you're concerned about it, you could actually take some olive oil and coat the clove and then insert it vaginally. I've had women do that 3 to 5 days before birth, and I have never seen a problem from Strep B as long as you follow one of those protocols to flush it out. What do we have for question number 3?
Vivian asks, my baby is teething. What would you recommend to reduce pain?
Vivian, this is a difficult time to go through, and they can be quite fussy while they're teething. One of the basic rules of thumb to follow is cold is your friend. So anything like putting a spoon in the refrigerator or freezing a banana and letting them gnaw on that, all of those things will help. However, in episode 14, so just last week, Alicia and I actually got into a really lengthy discussion on teething pain. So if you would like to go back one episode and pull up episode 14, there is a lot of really good information that I think will be helpful. So take a look, try it, and then post for us and let us know how it's working. We are way out of time for today, so we are going to wrap this up. This has been the Ask Dr. Mom Show. I'm Sandra Ellis, and I've been here with Alicia Decker. Thank you for joining us today.